One of my boys, Phil Gertner, he coined the term, or he just told me it. He received it from somebody. He said, there's value in recovery. And how I took it is like, there's value in being the underdog and still winning, because now you can teach people. Nobody listens to what you say. They just watch what you do and determine their actions based on that. It's like somebody who telling me, yo, you can make this amount, but you're broke. Like, I'm probably not going to listen to you because your actions haven't shown what you're telling me. A B is not good. Like, I need an A, and if everybody else got an A, then I need an A+. I'm in my own little video game where it's like, I have to figure out how to win at life.
Today I'm sitting with former NFL player David Caldwell. David signed with the Indianapolis Colts as an undrafted free agent in 2010. He started 13 games as a strong safety during the 2011 regular season with 67 tackles. David was waived in the 2012 season and later signed to the New York Giants in 2013 before again being waived and then signed with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the Canadian Football League, where he played from 2014 to 2016. David played football and graduated from William & Mary, and he is a native of Montclair, New Jersey, where he graduated from Montclair High School before he spent a postgraduate year at the Lawrenceville School. Today, David is the vice president at NFL Alumni Association. He is also a board member to the Montclair Fund for Educational Excellence, and he is a business development specialist at the Street Smart Salesman. David, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. I appreciate you having me, man.
Hey, as you know, I bring people on the show that I consider to be docents. Docents are people that inspire, influence, and guide others through their actions. These are the relentless competitors and high achievers of our society. You, my friend, you are a docent. So I brought you on today so that we can talk about who your docents were growing up.
Dan, that means a lot just to hear you say that. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to telling you about my experience as well as my docents and how it kind of all led me to get where I am right now.
Before we start, I got to know, who are your top 3 rappers of all time?
All right, Pac, for the storytelling, everything, like revolutionary, rapping, and just the man that he was. From a pure rap perspective, Big, got to throw Big in there. And I'm probably going to throw you off, and Drake. Drake is my third. And no, hold on. Let me break it down. Break it down real quick.
It's all
Drake,
good. Who's honorable mention?
Drake is, and I know there was some questionable things as far as with writing and whatnot, but I still feel like when Drake decides, to bring the pen game, he's unmatched in a lot of areas. So yeah, I know I probably lost a lot of. Yeah.
He's obviously amazing. Yeah. No, he's obviously amazing. I mean, okay, I will say, you actually add, I told you this before we jumped on, you added a new question to my mix because I was doing some research and I saw that one of the videos that you posted on Instagram, you reminded me of something that was, I haven't even thought about it, the old TV commercials with T-Mobile where they say, who are your top 5? Remember your top 5, right? So I got to ask you, who are your top 5? Because as they say, you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself the most in your life. So who are you these days surrounding yourself with the most? Like, who are the people that are that you communicate with verbally, in person, or otherwise most often in your life? Who are your top 5?
All right, so my dad and my mom, they kind of fit in that one category. That's always going to be, part of my top 5. Just throughout life, giving me a foundation and giving me the freedom to, always the belief in myself, as well as the freedom to just go out there and just make stuff happen. And then I would say my mentor, my business partner, my Uncle Anthony, he's my Italian uncle. He's the one who kind of became when football was over and, it's kind of like, oh shit, this is the real world. Like, what am I about to do? He's the one that kind of took me under the wing. He became my coach, off the field. He introduced me to the healthcare industry, introduced me to sales, to business development. And that's who I partner with right now. So I rely on him heavily. Who would I say? I'd say definitely my brother, actually. My brother he's a chef, but a lot of the conversations that we have are always about building. And that's something that my parents always instilled in me. As far as for my brother and I, they're always like, hey, at the end of the day, it's just you two. Like, when you need to rely on somebody, it's just going to be you two. And, he's in, it's like a lot. My top 5 is top 5 for different things. Obviously, Anthony's my business, my parents, that's the foundation. My brother is a support system. He's the guy that's always giving me the ideas and instilling in me, like, yo, you're the one. Like you got to lead us. You got to lead us. So that means a lot to me as well. Who else? My boy Donye McCleskey. He's a former teammate of mine. He is when it comes to purpose and, you know, having a purpose in life, he's adopted one to really help he focuses on building Black businesses, which I think is just so crucial for our community. And a lot of the things that foundationally we're not taught, he pretty much took on that onus and responsibility to say like, hey, I'll be the one. I'm going to learn everything that I can, and I'm going to bring it back to you guys so we can build together. And I don't even know what number I'm on. I would say
5. I think mom, dad, you could, yeah.
5 is, so you're going to have to give me 6. You have to give me 6 because 5.
Mom and dad will count as 1, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they'll count as 1. Then I had my Uncle Anthony, I had my brother, I had Danye, the guy who you just interviewed, Grant.
Oh, Grant, yeah.
Definitely 1. And it's crazy because we live in a time period now where you can have a top 5 and not even know somebody. He doesn't know that he's in my top 5, but he's in my top 5. I'm looking at him. I like his hunger. You know, he might turn a lot of people off because he's arrogant. No, he's a winner. Yep. He's a winner. I like winners. I like winners. So I would go with Grant to round it off. And matter of fact, we'll stay there.
Cool.
That'll be my top 5.
I like that. And Grant will like that too. I was just talking to Grant yesterday, actually, on Clubhouse. Yeah, we were just talking about some Bitcoin.
Man, he has no idea how much he is that's my guy. That's awesome. Uncle Grant. He has no idea.
That's awesome.
That's Uncle
so
Grant.
Cool, bro. All right. I was going to jump into who your early life docents are. We'll jump into that in a second. But you had mentioned, we had talked about something earlier. I'd also posted a video where you talked about your white buddy texted you and said, do you hate white people because of some of the things you were posting? I would like to touch on that a little bit. So let's just talk into that for just a couple minutes. Yeah, go ahead. If you want to just tell us about that video and what you were talking about.
So 100%. So I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey. It's one of the most diverse towns, you know, in the country, probably in the world. And what it does is it sets you up for like a false reality, you know, when you go on to college or you go on to prep school, because the dynamics in the town, you know, your best friends are, you know, when you're young, you hang out with everybody. Your best friends are white. And it continued that way until high school, where you may not, you know, everybody goes into their pockets where it's mostly like sports related or, you know, what your hobbies are. However, you just always have these lifelong friends. Then you go to college and it's a little bit different. Everybody's not exposed to everything. So, you know, I can remember, you know, being in college and, you know, one of my friends, they were babysitting. It was my girlfriend. Her friend was babysitting, and the little girl, she was a white girl. She's like, oh, can I touch your hair? And it was respectful, but it was like literally she had always seen like Lil Wayne with locks, but she never felt locks. So it's a different perspective where it's like, oh shit, like she's never really been exposed to anybody that looks like me. So when I remember being up in Canada, I had a Haitian buddy, Fred, who I should have had as one of my docents, definitely, because he's probably the first one that jump-started, you know, my conscious awakening, whatever you want to call it, to where I was just starting to look at things where I questioned everything that I had learned, because I was in a position where I was up there, you know, the Mike Brown situation that just happened. And I felt so helpless, you know, where everything was going on in the United States. And here I'm up in Canada, and I felt like, not that I could have done anything, but I just felt so out of place. And he kind of came to me, and it's funny because Haitians, when we're growing up, you know, it's like, this shit sucks to say, but it's like Haitians don't make fun of us. Like kind of like you make fun of the Haitians, like you wearing all these funny colors stuff, but it's just all fun and games. Like I had a lot of Haitian friends growing up. We'd always joke on each other, but I felt like we would always have we'd always get the last laugh. But with him, he was coming at me hard. He's like, yeah, you silly Black Americans, you silly African Americans. Like all you do is your culture is that you follow white culture, you follow white religion, and he was telling me all these things, and I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? But he kept on me, like the next day in practice, he's saying the same thing. So for me, I was like, you know what? Let me look into it. I've always been the type where it's like, okay, it gets to a certain point where I just want to learn more. So he handed me a Hidden Colors documentary. It was a DVD, and I'm like, what the hell is Hidden Colors? And that probably started my journey. And I was learning so much that I hadn't learned, and I became furious. I became furious at my teachers growing up. I became furious at everybody. I would talk to my parents and friends, and you know, if they weren't as excited to learn the stuff that I was learning, I'd become furious with them. And I was posting everything that I was learning because I wanted to like put it out there for everybody to see. But what I was putting out there, if you grow up in a certain way where everything is kind of on the hush hush, and then here you got this Black guy talking up about things, it offended people, and it wasn't meant to be offensive or anything. I'm just talking about my truth, talking about how we're, this improper education is impacting us to be in the situations that we're in now. So I would, be out there talking. And like I said, I was in Canada, so I felt like, damn, I can't do anything. So this was me putting it out there. And my mixed boy, Ryan Moody, my guy, like I had a lot of white guys on my football team, college friends, went away on vacation, like my brothers. And he texted me, and you can tell when somebody's texting you, like hey, how's it going? Like, and it's like, bro, what's up? Like talk to me. And at that point in time, I probably already knew him, like ready to be combative and contentious, and he's just like, yeah, so, was talking to some of the fellas. I already knew where it was going. He's like, yeah, and I'm just going to say it, but they're wondering, like, do you hate white people? And I guess because he was mixed, but he looked more white.
They sent the mixed guy in.
Pushed him to be the one that like asked. Yeah, they said send the mixed guy in. Like so, and it was all like, for me, it was just like bro, like show me one thing that I've said to where you would think that I hate white people. And he's just like, he couldn't say anything, couldn't name anything specific. And it was just like, well, it's just like, he said this, so we kind of thought this. And really, I get it, because everything that I wasn't taught, he wasn't taught. So therefore, his perspective was based on everything that he was educated on. And mine was, before Fred, kind of, gave me this awakening, I would have agreed on, some of the stuff where it's like, yo, dude is bugging, like, and that's what my teammates were looking at. So it wasn't just white people looking at me like, you're bugging. My parents were calling my friends like, yo, is DAC all right? Like, is he going through it? Like, yo, it's going to be all right. And my dad, he's always been like, not to compare the two and, put them against each other, but he's always been more Malcolm than Martin. Like, those are the big guys' name. He's always been more Malcolm X. I'm born on Malcolm X's birthday. So I always felt like a strong connection. Yeah, I always felt a strong connection to Malcolm. So my dad was always like, my dad in the family is known as the guy who don't ask him unless you want to know just the real deal of his opinion. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to say it how it is. And that's how I've always been. And my brother gets on me a lot. He's like, yo, you could say it a little differently. I'm like, but I didn't mean it differently. Like, how you feel is how I intended to make it feel. But I get it. I toned it down a little bit and, tried to, finesse it. But this situation, it was kind of like a mirror of like what was happening in general, to where my friends and my group message, like they're looking at me like, yo, he's tripping. I would walk in. There was an incident at a football game in Canada to where I blocked a punt. And in Canada, it's different than the NFL. In Canada, when you make a big play, they put the camera on you on the sideline, give you the mic. And like, you can say whatever, like, yo, shout out to hometown, Montclair, New Jersey. Like, you can do XFL. All that. Like, mom, we made it. Like, right. So it's like, they try to make it entertaining. That's cool. So I used to play with a shirt that I made, and it said OG, and then it said Black Lives Matter. At the time, I was a Black Lives, at the time this one was just happening, I was repping Black Lives Matter. If you ask me right now about it, I don't support, I don't agree.
Well, you don't agree with the organization itself, but not the movement, right?
The organization, I think I don't agree with the organization.
They're trying to kind of take down America almost.
And what I found out, exactly, and what I found out, a lot of people that follow the movement, it's like once something gets like popularized, and everybody, the masses start to follow it, I tend to, like, it's almost like it gets commercialized. And it's like, bro, that's not what this was about. And now y'all are turning into something else, where like Black Lives Matter put out something where they're trying to and they tried to like take back their mission statement. Their mission statement was like breaking down the patriarchal structure. I'm like, bro, every advantage I had, my biggest superhero is my dad in the household. My biggest cheat code to life is my Black king man in the household. So what are y'all talking about? And when they start taking money from certain people, when you take money from certain people, they control your agenda. So it's like, it just went all the way in a direction where I'm like, bro, I'm not here for any of this. This is nothing to do with helping Black people. I don't know what they're trying to do, but I'm just not with it. So going back to that point, I had my t-shirt on the sideline. So at that point, I'm like, yo, I'm lifting up my shirt, like bring the camera. So I brought the camera. I'm like, OG, that was out here getting it. That was my brand and all my friends and stuff. And I said, Black Lives Matter. I had the shirt, proud. The next day, what the team will do, they'll send you a copy of the video. So when they sent me a copy of the video, they came to me and I saw the dude's face, the video guy, and he's like, yeah, they didn't get it. And I'm like, what do you mean they didn't get it? Like, and in Canada, I wasn't a starter on the team. And So like, therefore I was like, nah, I need that. Like that situation may not come up again. Like I need to use that platform. Like that was my opportunity. And they're like, the network didn't get it. TSN, like they didn't put it on TV. Like I'm like, they recorded it. I was on the sideline, they recorded it. He's like, yeah, but maybe they didn't go to commercial. I'm like, no, that's bullshit. Like I'm not hearing any of that. So what I did, TSN is like the ESPN out there. I went on Twitter. So I went on Twitter, like I said, I'm outspoken. And I said, damn, I guess TSN doesn't care about all the Black Americans that come up here to play football and help boost the economy in this league. So TSN like reached back, or they didn't respond. And I was going at them. I'm like, shit, I guess our lives don't matter. Maybe I shouldn't even be up here, because at that point, like when I'm the type of person where I feel like something is right, I'm standing on it. I don't really, I'll think about, what may happen, but at that point, it doesn't matter, because what's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. That's just how my parents raised me. Which my dad is, as I grew older and he realized he raised me that way, it makes him a little nervous, because it's like, shit,
create a monster.
And I've had real conversations with my mom. My dad actually came to me and he said, like I talked to your brother and your mom, and I told him, like, I could see you ended up being a martyr. And and my mom was like, and for me, I was like, shit, like all of my heroes are martyrs. Like a lot of them are martyrs. So, you know what I mean? Like, but as you're young and you don't know it's like, I'm just, at that point, I'm just focused on it. And it's like easy. Like maybe there's another way that we can handle this. So literally, and he told me, he's like, yeah, I said that to your mom, and your mom got mad at me. She started crying, and she's like, don't say that to me. Like, she's a mom. Nobody wants to hear that. But so back to the TSN, the network. So the vice president of the team, Scott Mitchell, the president of the team, Scott Mitchell, he was at practice the next day. So all of my teammates, they saw it on Twitter, and they're like, when they walked in the morning, they're like, damn, bro, like, we're surprised you're still here right now. Really? So I'm like, bro, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, like they knew how I was, because this wasn't like the first thing. Like I had been doing this, and they knew that, like, there's nothing that the CFL, like, if they cut me, okay, cool, I'll go home. Like, I got a great education, I'll figure it out. I don't care. So that was just my mindset. I'll figure it out. So when I'm walking in practice that day, the whole day is just weird. Like the coaches knew how I was, and my linebacker coach, safety coach, whatever, Jeff Reinbold, he's like a Rasta Hawaiian white guy who was just with all that. He's like, nah, like, DC, speak your mind. Speak your mind. So he would be amping me up. And I'm like, yeah, fuck that, coach. Like, so he so at the end of practice, Scott Mitchell comes down. He doesn't come to our practice. So I'm walking through, they had like some water afterwards. So I'm like, I'll say what's up to him if we make eye contact, but he's probably here for me to speak to me, but whatever. So I kept walking.
You had to get a little nervous.
Right. So he said, I saw him out the corner of my eye tell whoever he was talking to, hold on 1 second. Hey, David, you mind if I just grab you for a second? So we actually had a conversation for a long time, and I kind of explained my perspective on it and why it was so important to me, and he kind of explained his perspective.
What was his? Yeah.
He grew up in Canada, in that football world. So a lot of his heroes, being a Canadian, a lot of the best football players are the black guys, just that go up to Canada. So he always looked up to these people. He was always around them in locker rooms. So his perspective was totally different, where it's like he was exposed to different types of people in different cultures. So for him, he's like, I get it, because as I got older, I realized that everybody doesn't have my perspective and experience. So he was like, I get it. And he said, well, the TSN producer is actually here. he's at the stadium. Like, the producer. So I was like, okay, cool. So then he's like, well, he asked if he can, speak to you. And it was almost like a tone where it's like y'all are nervous about something. Like, I don't get what y'all are nervous about. Not that he was nervous, but he just knew that it was a sensitive subject that he didn't want to like set the tone. He didn't want to say, hey, can you say this to him? Or, hey, can you say, he was just like, just have the combo with him. He just wants to talk to you. If you want to talk to him, cool. So I ended up talking to him, and I explained to him, how much that bothered me, like, as a football player, I want to use my platform to, talk about the things that are important to me. And, rather than just say the same thing, like, yo, shout out mom, I just blocked the punt. Like, my mom just saw me block the punt, like, whatever, you know what I mean? So I talked to him, and they apologized. And of course they said, like, well, the next game, if you make a play, we promise we'll get you. Like I said, it didn't happen. You know what I mean? It didn't happen, but it was just one of those things that I just still felt good about just standing
What
on,
year did
the
that
principles.
happen? Your first or second year and the team?
My first year, 2015. Yeah, so it was my first year.
So the team was essentially cool with it. Is what I'm leading to. They didn't cut you at the end of the year.
They knew how I was. Yeah, no, they didn't cut me. They started calling me like DAC X, and DAC is everybody calls me DAC. I didn't even tell you. It's because my dad's name is David. So David Alexander Caldwell. It's just my initials. Nobody's really called me teachers. Nobody's really called me David. So they'd be like, yo, X, brother X. Like they'd be like playing around and stuff like that. But they kind of embraced it and got behind it because even though the ones that didn't necessarily agree with it, it still got them to think in a certain way that they weren't thinking before. And because they knew me, where it's like, I'm a smile guy, like I'm cool with everybody. So it kind of threw people off where it's like, damn, like he's so cool, but why is he saying this stuff? And I'm saying it because shit, it's important. So
listen, I appreciate it. Like we talked about it before. I wanted to talk about this. I want people to hear it. I think it's important. In the white community, a lot of people will say, man, these guys are making so much money. Why do they got to make it political? But the reality is that we're living in our world, where we don't acknowledge and understand or appreciate what it is that the black community has to go through on a day-to-day basis either. So I think the conversation is important. That's why I brought it up to the top of the call. So I thought it was important that we talk about it. But
yeah. And just to be clear, I don't want to, in Canada, who knows, like I always say, like, cause I have a buddy of mine that played at the time, like maybe a couple years ago, he's playing with the Giants. And this is like when Kaepernick, taking a knee was going on. And I haven't watched I haven't watched football since Kaepernick, hasn't played. And I reevaluate at the end of every year, or I should say the beginning of every season. It's just a comfort level for me. And that, as well as other things, but mainly that. So, and I kind of forgot where I was going with it, but I just wanted to make the point that it's different with the NFL guys risking their paychecks than it is with the CFL guys.
A little bit different.
Like the CFL guys, yeah. So I do want to say that me, if you know me, then I'd like to think that I'm still going to do whatever I feel is right. Whatever money's on the line, and even not watching football these last 3-4 years, whatever it's been. I've had certain business opportunities to where it's like, hey, a lot of my clients or potential clients, hey, let's go watch this football game, together. And I'm like, like I'll make up an excuse, and it's like, damn, and it sucks because it's like a doctor becoming like the top 1% of what they do, and then not being comfortable leveraging that. Like that's what you're supposed to do. You develop an expertise. So for me, I've worked out with my young boys. I have a lot of young boys in town. And I stopped completely working out with them, like training them and everything. And I went back to it once last spring, just because I just felt so weird from a football standpoint. This is mainly just on the health issues with the CTE, but I just felt so weird encouraging kids to be all in on something where it's like, you're not likely to make it. Like I tell kids I was lucky, I did all the hard work. A lot of people do that. I got lucky. And I'm not afraid to say it. I got lucky. There's a lot of other things that if I would have put my mind on, that I would have been successful a lot earlier, So, it just is what it is. But, and that would have been like a long-term success. But it's cool. I'm here now. So, that's just my position on football.
Let's talk about – thank you for that, by the way. Let's talk about who your early docents were, right? We talked about some of them, I think. But parents, coaches, athletes, brother, etc. Maybe even people like you say you haven't ever met, just people you looked up to. So who were some of your early docents?
Definitely Malcolm X. Malcolm X was definitely an early docent for me. Who else? I gotta say my dad again, just because that's like the
what did dad do? What was his job? What did he do for a living?
He was an attorney, actually. So my dad, he's the youngest of 9 kids. All of his brothers and sisters were raised on a sharecropping farm. My grandparents were sharecroppers. And he was the only one born in New York City, born in the South Bronx, grew up poor. And he became the first to go to college. College wasn't enough. He ended up going to Rutgers Law School. He went to City College for undergrad, then went on a program where it's called SEEK. And SEEK is a program for kids who don't have the grades and come from poor families, but they get an opportunity. They take remedial courses their first year and then the fourth. So he did all the work, like he did the activity, like he was laser focused through all the distractions growing up in the South Bronx. He was able to do this. then went to, Rutgers Law School, became an attorney. So for me,
well, he had to catch up in some ways, right? If you think about it, the whole idea of the SEEK program, as I understand what you're saying, is that wherever he grew up, he was left behind because the community is left behind. Economically, you don't have as good at schools. So of course he's going to go in, and then he's going to have to do a little bit more work than everybody else to try to catch up at that point, I guess, right?
100%. And it's, and even from my grandfather's perspective, like when he left maybe 2 years or 1 or 2 years before and went up north, he kind of had to and set up a life for the family, then came back down and brought everybody up. So from when I hear these stories, and then to see my dad actually make up for all those things and then compete with, people, and not to say that he didn't have real excuses. If he would have failed, then he could have said like, because hey, the powers that be are against me, it's racist, all this other stuff. Cool, you're valid, excuses. However, doesn't put food on the table. So therefore, I saw him, and it's like I see him in a suit every day. Not that people need to make a lot of money in suits as I'm looking at you, you know what I mean? It's just a different, but for me, I always got to see my dad in a professional light to where it's like, this man is a superhero. Like he is a legit superhero. Like Superman has his superpowers, Batman doesn't. My dad has superpowers. Like I
love that.
I never grew up thinking anything else. And like, he's still to this day, like we go back, like we clash, like we collide when it comes to different politics, different things. But that's what you're supposed to do, and it's always love, because at the end of the day, I know that there's nobody on this earth. Of course, my mom, but there's nobody on this earth that just wants the best for my brother and I. And like to have that's invaluable. And I always noticed it because a lot of my friends that I grew up with, they didn't have fathers in their lives.
Yep.
So that's when I always call it like a cheat code, to the point where it's like, he has to be one of my dozens.
What's interesting though, is that you were able to take, some people use their, I guess, not sacrifices, whatever, like having a single parent as a mom, or no dad in the house, or being abused, or some kind of an early life trauma. Some people use that without knowing it, right? Unknowingly, they use it as the grit, that they develop this grit that allows them to be successful, right? And forces them to like, I'm going to take me against the world kind of thing. You were able to actually come from a privileged more situation. Dad did well, was a lawyer, but you looked 100%. Up to that, you emulated that. Whereas a lot of people, they become like whamby-pamby kids, right? Like spoiled little brats, or you didn't, right? So like there had to be something there that dad's success, it was something else, bro. Like the way your parents, your mom and dad must have raised you must have been slightly different, because they had means, right? And he was doing okay. And yet he still developed grit in you. How did you develop the grit?
100%. And it was him. And let me give you a little backstory too. Like my family, like they've always set like barriers, or broke barriers, I should say, where it's like my grandfather was one of, if not, I think he was the first Black athlete at Seton Hall University. My Uncle Dobie was literally 3 months after, or 2 months after Jackie Robinson. Like he was the second Black baseball player, the first in the American League. So
what was his name?
I grew up with all of these stories. Larry Dobie.
Okay.
Yeah, he was an all-star. All-star. He's in the Hall of Fame. I actually got to visit the Hall of Fame with my family, which was cool. So, but for me, it was like, I've always had it in me to where if my older brother's doing it, and that's always been my biggest competitor, because he was actually way more athletic than me, but he just didn't like sports. He was just one of those kids, like he could jump and like touch the rim, like 7th, 8th grade. And I'm like, yo, like he's jumping. And he just was so athletic, but he just didn't really, care. And he was always the type that would try everything, even if it drove my parents crazy. And I could always learn from that. And I don't know what put it in me, but I always felt like, this is going to sound crazy. I used to be so obsessed with just winning and being number one. I say I'm playing in the major leagues, I'm playing in NFL, I'm playing in NBA, and my parents never really discouraged me. They'd be like, shit, work hard, like my grandfather, work hard. And they'd be realistic with me, say, hey, you're pretty short. You're gonna have to, figure this out. Like I was real short growing up. And but they never discouraged me. And I don't know what put it in me as to feel like I just have to be number one. Like I used to have like panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Now that I'm looking back, where it's like I'm a little kid, and if I had a bad game by my standards, like it was just a bad week. I just felt like, and the part that I said I'm going to sound crazy, I used to really think like, because I had my parents, I had my brother, I had just a strong support system, and things, you know, when you start becoming successful at a young age, and you realize like, hey, I'm a little more athletic than most of these guys. I'm a little smarter than most of these guys. You know, in class, you know, you're getting your grades, and I used to think like, I don't even want to say this shit.
Say it.
But I used to really have these thoughts where it's like, is this like a game where everybody else in the world is kind of just playing a role, and like I'm in my own little video game where it's like I have to figure out how to win at life. And I've like talked to my parents about it, and it's kind of that like delusion is kind of what helped propel me to just have this type of attitude where it's like a B is not good. Like I need an A, and if everybody else got an A, then I need an A plus. And there were a couple instances that probably made it a little bit different. For example, I was always one of the best basketball players, like in elementary school or like PRCA leagues. But in seventh grade is the first time I got cut from a team. And I got cut from a team that I used to be on when I was like, say I was 9, I was playing with the 11-year-old kids. But for whatever reason, like my confidence just kind of, you know, I wasn't playing as much basketball. I was, you know, doing a lot of baseball and football. But basketball was always my first love. Like it's still my favorite sport. And when I got cut from those teams, my dad he said, "Why'd you get cut?" And he knew at that time my confidence was struggling. I wasn't really shooting as much, but I was still a real good player. And the coach, I remember in practice, said, "Yeah, you know, everybody's not going to make this team. And if you don't make the team, then you should call me. You know, you should call me and figure out why you didn't make the team. Like that's the type of player you should be. If you need to come to practice with us to make the team for next year." So I told my parents that, and my dad said, "Well, what are you waiting for?" After I got cut. And he made me call the coach. Coach didn't pick up. I left a message. He made me call back the next day. Coach didn't pick up. And these were people that in town, like I had developed real relationships with. They had coached me from the time I was like in first, second grade. So for me, that was a real demoralizing, to the point where that was the first time I started to question things. And I realized like either I'm going to just kind of like sit on this and just like, you know, it is what it is, or I'm just going to make sure that the shit never, ever happens again. So I busted my ass that whole year. And of course, you know, the first couple of weeks, it's like I'm at the park every day. And then, you know, as it goes on, it's like, you know, I played a lot of sports. So it was hard for me to just focus on basketball. But my dad got me a basketball court and a basketball hoop in the back. I played with it on grass. It was grass. It was just on grass. And I would just play all the time.
It's up against a tree.
The next year, right. The next year when I went to tryouts, I changed my mindset, but I ended up getting cut again from that team. And where it's like that could have broke me. That's one of those situations where it's like, shit, you know, the first time I had all the energy, like, oh, it's the underdog story, but it's tough to continuously be the underdog. Like, so I was pissed off. But what was good for me is I was playing I went to a private school for a year, and I was playing on my private school team, and it gave me the confidence, you know, to still play. And fast forward, a lot of the kids that made it over me, my friends that I went to school with and others, you know, from surrounding towns, I ended up, you know, fast forward like 4 years later, we had a 19-5 basketball team for my high school team. We were number 1 going into the state tournament, and I was the point guard. And at the end of that season, I got voted co-MVP with another player over, and he wasn't on the team. And a lot of my other boys that made that team, I got MVP over them. So, and it was just from grit, you know, like I realized at a young age that to tap into my advantages. If I'm on the football field and I'm stronger than you, I'm running through you. Every time I'm going to demoralize you. And that's just how I'm going to step on your neck. And if you're better than me, I don't care. I'm going to figure out a way to. That's just always been it. And probably an example in baseball that I always remember. I actually have the baseball. We were getting blown out by like Cedar Grove, town in Jersey. I'm not familiar. They had a real good baseball team. They're right next to us. they're seen as like the town that you don't drive through, you know, one of those things where it's like, they're a little racist, you know, whatever, you know, people just throw it out. So I'm playing against them and they're beating us by like 12 runs. And it's like the fourth inning. So they do the mercy rule. So my coach is like, fellas, you guys want to keep playing? Like they said, they'll keep playing. And all of us, we're like, nah, we'll keep playing, you know. And my dad pulls me over. He's mad. And he saw me, I guess, like just down and not confident. He says, I said, you go next at bat, you go up there and you make them remember your name. And he told it to me, just I'm like scared, like now going up to bat. The next time I went up bat, I hit like a home run, like onto the next field. And like as I'm jogging around the bases, like the other team, like they were impressed too. They're like, yo, good hit, like yo, good job. And seeing the face as I'm like rounding third base, just seeing my dad, where it's just like one of these, you know, it was a smile. And my dad's very emotional. He's always kissed my brother and I, like still to this day, like kiss on the cheek. He's like, I love you. And it was just like it wasn't like he had got
everybody else is jumping around and your dad's just like, that's it.
Right. He's just like, yep. Like, exactly. Like so these type of situations and even like going to the prep school, because it wasn't just athletically, it was academically as well.
I mean, you went to William & Mary. That's an unbelievable school. Yeah.
Right. And so academically, which was always first and foremost, like if I got a low B and I was supposed to get an A, I wasn't playing in the game that weekend. That's just how my parents raised me. So those type of instances, they just always carried over, where it's like the standard was so high and I was so obsessed and addicted to I needed to feel like I was the best. I just needed to. And it just carried over. And it's funny that you mentioned like the colleges, because come and stop me if you want to go on something else too. No. But the college story is kind of interesting too, because when I was coming out of high school, I didn't have any scholarships, and we played against like Bosco and Bergen. And I can remember, like, just
so people understand that if you don't know, they're like the top 5, top 10 schools in the nation every year in football. Right.
Yeah, every year. And St. Joe's
and Montville.
McCourty twins. Those are my bros. Yeah. And after the Bergen Catholic game, and we hated Bergen. We hated them. Pretty much they just beat the shit out of us. I don't even think they hated us. We thought it was a rivalry, but they beat us by like 40 points. Everybody's a rivalry
game, so for the other team, for them.
Right. And so that's when they had Cushing. So they had Cushing, who you know, and after the game, Fred Stengel, the head coach, came over to me and he was like, you know, Caldwell, you know, we think you're really good, you know. And he had a couple of his players, Wolver John Pierre was on the team, and he said, like, I want you to reach out to me. I want to help you get into college.
Really?
And at that point, I was so prideful. I'm like, man, whatever.
That was the Bergen Catholic head coach.
The Bergen Catholic head coach pulled me to the side because he knew that Montclair was known for having great players, but they don't really go anywhere. And they either get in trouble or it's just they underachieve, whatever the reason. They don't have the grades. So he pulled me over, and I never reached out to him. So after my senior year, I had no offers, none. And the only schools that were interested in me that accepted me in coming were Princeton, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, Lafayette. Like every Ivy League school I had the opportunity to go to.
You didn't go to Ivy League, and what are you, crazy?
I told them no. And I'll tell you what happened. I went to a practice for Princeton my junior year. They actually brought me there junior year, and they're like,
well, you went to Lawrenceville. That's like that's a feeder school, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is even before I went to Lawrenceville. So then when I went to Lawrenceville, they were still, you know, like, because down the street, you know, so they were on me. And I went to one of their practices, and I said, obviously the academics are going to challenge me. Of course. But I wanted to be challenged more athletically, one. And the biggest point was, I said, if they pay for my education in some way, I'll go. It's worth it. I always question it now. I was like, shit, you should have just fucking went anyway. You know, that network. You just can't, you know what I mean? That network. Yeah. And Princeton was the #1 school at the time. And I told my parents, and I said, I'm not going anywhere where I have to pay for my education if I'm playing football. I said, if I'm playing football for a school, then they're paying for my education. So dig this. I turned down, there was a window where Lawrenceville, my buddy who I played baseball with all my life, his dad went there. So he introduced me to the idea of a prep school. Yep. And one of the Richmond football coach that was recruiting me, he's like, yeah, why don't you go to prep school? We don't have any more scholarships though. I'm like, prep school? And then he was explaining to me, I was like, now I got to tell my parents I'm going to do another year of high school and I'm turning down Princeton, So I told them, and like I said, my parents have always just supported me and gave me the freedom to, like, they trusted me. They trusted me betting on myself. And I hadn't even got into Lawrenceville. And I told Princeton and all the Ivies that I'm not going there. And they were telling me, they're like, well, where are you going? And I'd be like, I don't know yet, but I'm trying to go to Lawrenceville, but I haven't got accepted yet. And they're like, this is crazy. They're like, you're turning down Ivy League schools and you haven't even gotten to a prep school. So it's like, I took the risk of just being at home, I don't know what I would have done. So, and I just stood on it. And my parents, they were like, hey, Lawrenceville, I was told that I would get like a full scholarship. And because they knew at the time, they told me I'd get a full scholarship before I turned down Princeton. When I turned down Princeton and they knew that the college deadline was up, they then told me I had to pay.
Lawrenceville did. And
the guy, Mr. Washington at Lawrenceville, one of the corniest men I've ever met. The corniest man I've ever met. And I've never even said this on a public platform, but what he did was so disrespectful. My dad is an attorney. He comes in with a legal pad and writes notes every meeting we ever had. He wrote down Mr. Washington said word for word, nothing makes us, for special guys like David, nothing makes us more happy than to just give you that call saying you're accepted and you're coming for free. And that's what your situation would be as long as you get accepted. After we get accepted, we reach out to Mr. Washington, like, hey, I said, oh, they said that, there's a payment, it's like, like my parents don't have that, they're doing all right, but they don't. And he said, oh, you must have misheard me. Told my dad that and told me that. So it's like,
now you've already exhausted your other options. So
I had to do it. So I had to, scramble with my parents. They came up with some. Those bonds that we're talking about, like CDs and stuff that your aunts
cashing them in.
My aunts had given me like savings bonds. Like, yo, cash it in. Not realizing well, it's not really worth it at this point. So I was like doing everything. The money that I had, my grandparents, they helped me out, and they all just, my whole family, my brother. Like I always talk about my brother. My brother is probably the best. He's the best friend to me out of anybody that I ever had. I've never seen somebody like, he's gotten into fights, arguments where it's like just him blindly supporting me. And I'm like, Judge, I was a little wrong in that place.
Doesn't matter.
Right? You know what I mean? But that situation and them empowering me to just bet on myself and kind of like put all the chips in, that's what kind of gave me the battery to where it's like, yo, I'm different. Yeah. Like I'm different. And to see that I did my year of prep school, William and Mary came by, and they ended up, the funny story here too, when they came in, Coach Boone, my prep school coach, he didn't really think that I was really that good. And I was kind of used to this because my freshman year coach, when I went to private school and came back to my hometown freshman team, Coach Morgan, I think that a lot of the privilege that I had, having a dad, being successful, my mom was a teacher in town for like 30-some years. A lot of people didn't like that. And they held it against me almost, to where they would put like players, like I was the best football player in town for like a long time, in my age group, like from the time I started, and they wouldn't let me play. And they'd come up with these excuses. So my freshman year, I didn't even get any like film or anything, not even on the freshman team. And then the next year I tried to, neither here nor there. So I had always dealt with coaches telling me like junior year, telling me like, oh, you're not that good. Like literally, like the coach and I are going back and forth of who's going to have a better career. I'm like, bro, you're like 50. Like, what the fuck? Like, so then in prep school, Coach Boone comes in and he sits at the table, and he's like, he writes down on a piece of paper, and it's like 4.55. And he turns to my coach. At this point, I was running track. I was the fastest kid in the school. And he says, will he ever run that? And to me, I'm just looking, like expecting my coach to be like, yeah, you can run now. My coach is like, Coach Ken Mills. Now, I'm calling out names. What's going on? Why? Well, yeah. And he said, he looked at, he said, I don't know about that. I looked at him appalled. Like I was sick.
You're like, let's go outside right now.
Word for word, I said, I'll run right that now. Right exactly. now. Right now. And I looked, I didn't even, like, it was like I turned my back to my coach and like looked at the Coach Boone. And I said, I'll run that right now. And Coach Boone, it was like a moment of silence. And he was just like, no, I think we got one. He just left it at that. He didn't ask me to run it. the next week, like he was like, they offered me a scholarship right after that. They didn't have any running back scholarships, so I never played cornerback in high school. Played a little bit maybe, but he's like, "Can you play cornerback?" I'm like, "Shit, yeah, I can play whatever." Yeah. So that we're confident. Like the next game, I played corner, sent him the tape. They offered me a scholarship. Wow. But situations like that, for whatever reason, have always like coaches have always questioned because I was never really just the most skilled.
What's your height?
Maybe
how tall are you?
Natural. I'm 5'11", 5'10" and a half, 5'11". I was always heavy for my position, so.
But you were fast, so the speed kills.
Yeah, so I was like 220 my first year in college. I weighed, and I got down a little bit in camp, but I was playing cornerback. So for whatever reason,
that's a big cornerback. 220, that's big.
It's a big corner.
Usually like 180s to 200, right? Yeah.
Smaller, yeah. A guy who he's probably he's a successful college coach now, like on D1A level, but he had just coached at UMass, and you know the name James Ahedabu? He played for the Jets for a little bit. He played safety. No. So he had coached him at UMass. He came over to us. We had the worst defense in school history at William & Mary.
Don't tell Trevor that.
Nah. But Trevor was part of the build-up to where we had the best defense in school history. But Coach Shoup came in, and he just liked me. And this was the first time that I really had a coach like, yo, why are you here? You should be at a bigger school. And I wasn't used to it, so it kind of threw me off from the first day. And he moved me to safety, and he just instilled this confidence in me to where it was like undeniable, where it's like, I'm going to make the league. Like I'm gonna go to business school because we had to apply for business school. I'm going to make business school, crush that, and I'm going to go to the league. And he was the coach. I could tell you that when I was trying out with the Giants, I had my agents were supposed to send out some tapes, and they probably did. Those are my guys. I shouldn't say that, but I said, "Hey, coach," I said, "Where'd you get my tape?" Or no, he said something about my tape. Like, "Oh, we like your tape, Coach Merritt," and I was like, "Oh, my agent sent it to you." He's like, "Nah." He said, "I think a guy Shoup." I said, "My coach." He was sending out my tapes, and I didn't tell him. Like he believed in me that much. So let's go on to something else.
It's all good. Yeah.
These stories, these type of stories have just always happened. And I think maybe it's just because I was always overconfident in myself.
So the question is like the mindset, like how did you build the confidence? And it's like, it seems to be emulating, looking up to your dad, wanting to follow in the footsteps of your dad, your brother. Did you have any early trauma in your life at all? Like, did you lose not a parent, but like a grandparent, or did you lose a friend, or is there anything that happened that kicked it in? Or was it just the complete antithesis? I want to emulate what I already see as a good role model versus being the antithesis of things I don't like in my life.
I was always scared of death. My aunt died when I was probably like 13 or 14, but I was scared well before that, to where my dad used to have to walk me around the house and check every single window and door before I went to sleep. This for a long time. I was always scared of death. And the biggest thing that scared me is the fact that I never knew how long I'd be here to try to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. So I was always, it just scared the shit out of me. I'm like, yo, so you're telling my parents, I couldn't make sense of it. I'm like, so you don't know how long you're going to live, mom and dad? Like, you don't know how long and they wanted to be honest with me, but it's like, it's a little kid asking about death. So I was always scared of that. And, even to this day, that's the only thing that I really fear, where just not having enough time. So like that, I wouldn't say that it was like any traumatic experience. It was mostly just a set of a lot of smaller things. And really, I just developed a chip on my shoulder at a real young age, to where I just felt that I had to always prove myself to everybody in everything. So it didn't matter whether it was Monopoly at the house. My parents used to always have to, like, it's not that serious. Like, you got to relax. And I'm still like that to this day. So
DAC, let me ask you, what is your superpower?
Mm-hmm. Hands down, I just don't stop. I just won't. Relentless. Like, you're not going to outwork me. I don't care what it is. You're not gonna. You could be better. You could be this. You could be that. If I know the rules to the game, one, I'm gonna figure it out, up here, and then two, I know that you're just not willing to go through the pain, the suffering, all of those things. And it's kind of weird, like you say, like where it's like you develop that through going through a lot. Here, like my friends that I grew up with, comparing my situation to theirs, I was privileged in a lot of ways. And I don't know what put it in me, but I used to have an okay wall. And it was an okay wall. Like I used to write all over my wall where it's like, these are my goals. And I had an okay wall where it's like anything that anybody ever said negative to me, I would just say, okay. And I would write it on there. And I would look at it every time I left my room. At night, I on my ceiling, I asked my mom to do it before. I wrote out my goals. So therefore, and I wrote them all out and I put a box next to them so I could check them off as I go. And I put it on top of my bed. So every morning I'm reminded like, okay, boom, that's the purpose. Like I want to do that. I want to do that. I need to make sure that everything I'm doing throughout the day is getting me to those goals. At night, I hold myself accountable. Did I do everything that I needed to do to get to those goals? So I don't really know where all this stuff came from, but I'm obsessed. I'm an obsessive person, and it's hurt me in a lot of areas of my life, just to be totally honest. But it's the only thing that I can rely on when I'm facing a big challenge to push
Let's
through.
get to that. I call this the cost of success.
Mm-hmm.
What you just said, it's hurt you in other areas of your life, otherwise known as the loneliness of excellence. Late nights, early mornings, when everyone else is going to bed or they're still sleeping, you're getting up and working out in the morning, or you're working out late at night, or you're studying late at night, neglecting your friends, possibly losing some friends over the years, right? Being misunderstood, feeling overwhelmed, feeling alone in your journey because nobody understands why you're so obsessive about what you're doing. It's questioning your sanity to some extent. As I said, this is the cost of success, right? Does this relate to you? Do you remember, like, did you lose any friends because they didn't understand why you were so obsessed about the things you did? And can you explain that journey for us and describe your obsession to us a little bit?
Yeah, I was that guy where it's like anything that you brought up, because I obsess over certain things and I always connect like, well, this is the reason why that. In the group message, I'm the guy where people are probably scared to write something that maybe have nothing to do with anything, but it's like, I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep learning. And if you guys don't elevate your argument or debate, then I'm just going to put my foot on your, I just looked at it with everything, and it's hurt me in like personal relationships where it's even like, nobody wants to be at a family gathering where everybody's happy, we're celebrating a holiday, and here DAC is talking about what black people need to do to get, like, why you should
so serious.
Fuck both the parties. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, bro, we're just trying to watch the game and have a couple drinks. And I became that. And it's like people can see it in me to where sometimes I'll just be like, okay, just don't say anything about anything. I'll just be quiet. But I've just always been that person. And I can remember specific examples where, like, dealing with my girlfriend to the point where, she comes home from work and she had my boss said this to me, it's a bad, and I get it. But for me, I'm like, so what? Nobody gives a shit. What are you going to do? And she's not used to hearing that. So she's like, you're so insensitive. And I get it. And it is insensitive because I'm not taking into account your perspective on it. And just different situations like that, where like my brother is probably the one that tries to tell me about it the most, to where he's like, hey, I think you can get a little bit out of it, a little bit more if you kind of said it like this, or said it like that. So, but I don't know. I just obsess over stuff because that's the only way for me to get better at football is to obsess over football. The only way for me to learn about real estate is to obsess over real estate. Like that's just, and it's almost like it's a defense mechanism, or it's a strategic, just, I don't know, the only way that if it's like you can go, how many people, it's like 0.007% of high school athletes going to the NFL.
I was doing the math, by the way. It's funny you say that, not to cut you off, but I apologize. But you said earlier the 1%, no. And I was like, it's got to be less. There's a million. I know there's about 1 million high school football players, and there's only, I was like, what is there, 55-man roster, 32 teams, right? So 55 times 32, 1760.
It's like less than 1% of 1%.
Bro, it's crazy. It's like a tenth of 1% or something like that. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you got to play in the NFL is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Like you said earlier, we'll touch on that next. My next question is going to relate to this, but it's such a small percentage, odds, chance. There's a little bit of luck in there, I guess, like you said, a little bit.
It's a lot of it. And so for me to accomplish that, it's like if anybody becomes successful in anything, you look at, just like I look at you. How were you successful? I want to learn. I look at myself and to say, how was I successful in this particular area where I was challenged the most? And I obsessed over it. So yes, it's going to be like sleepless nights. It's going to be a lot of things, but I'm just a sacrifice. Like, I'm a sacrifice. Like, my purpose is to sacrifice, like you and I were talking about. This isn't about me. It's about my family. It's about my kids. It's about paying my parents back. They're retired. I don't want them worrying about money. I don't want them worried about this is not about me. And it's just a bigger purpose. So I wish I was smarter, and I wish I was maybe more skilled to where I could be successful without obsessing, but that's the only way I know.
I interview people all the time, as you know. You're number 17 on my interviews, right? And I can tell you every single high achiever I've met is obsessive. So there's nothing unique here in that sense. The unique part is that only like 1 or 2% of the population is like this, right? It's like some wacky obsession about what, like some guy that's like the biggest Lego maker ever, you know, like there's always an obsession of some sort, and that's how they become the best at what they do, or one of the best at what they do, you know? So these are the sacrifices, to your point, you know, that we're talking about, the cost of success or the loneliness of excellence. We touched on grit. That's what I was going to talk about. Angela Duckworth, she wrote the book Grit, a professor at UPenn, Ivy League school, by the way. You should have went to Ivy League. I'm just kidding. Hey, listen, William and Mary is basically Ivy League school. I mean, it's not in the Ivy League.
Basically, Ivy is a little. It's basically Ivy to anybody who didn't go to an Ivy League. Like, that's what.
But you had all the acceptances.
It's like when
you know. I mean, you know, I got two cousins, as I told you, they went to William and Mary, and they did not get accepted to the Ivy League schools. So that's very impressive. I'm proud of so she wrote that book, Grit, the power of, I'm reading here, the power of passion and perseverance. And she has said that highly successful people had a kind of ferocious determination that played out in two ways. First, these people are unusually resilient and hardworking. And second, they know in a very, very deep way what they want in life, and they go get it. So I think that's what I think the separation is between those that make it to the league or professional sports, or those that make it to the elite level of business, or entertainment or otherwise, right? Or artistry, you know, and those that don't, you know, and frankly, it could be like this in anything. You could be in construction, and if you're growing a really good business and you're probably dedicated and you're 100% resilient and obsessed about it, right? And that's kind of the point of this show. And what I do is we interview people, and I told you I'm writing a book on it and trying to find the commonalities. So I think obsession is definitely one of them. But another thing you talked about earlier on in the conversation, we just touched on again, is I always say that one's success is basically determined by the opportunities presented to them, the choices that they make, and then sprinkle a little bit of luck on there, right? I think you kind of overemphasize the luck part, and I think that's your humility playing into it a little bit, which is great that you're humble. Your mom and dad raised a good kid, but I will say, it's more than luck, bro, to get to the NFL. There's definitely a luck element, but like you pushed yourself to a limit that all the others that didn't get there probably didn't push themselves. And that's how you get in. So I'm just curious, you know, I get a lot of heat from my other high achiever friends that I talk about this when I say there's a little bit of luck. Even Al Leiter's like, luck? What are you talking about, luck? You know, privately. And then on the interview, I tried to pull it out of him a little bit. But the problem is that, like he said, he's like, listen, he's like, I don't know if you watched the interview, right? He said, he's like, I generally don't think a lot of people are very happy for your success, which is probably true, because
that was one of the realest things that I took away from that.
Yeah, because I think it is the truth. And I don't think that they don't want you to be successful. I think what happens is for other people that have tried, and they think they tried, but they really didn't get as obsessed as you probably did, right? Those that have tried, when they see you get to the league, or they see you sell a company for a lot, or they see you do whatever you do, and it reminds them of what they really didn't do. They know they should have put in a little bit more, and they didn't. So now they're just going to look back on the glory days of their high school football days and be like, you know, I could have made it to the NFL. All I had to do was this. It's like, well, you didn't do it. So that's why you didn't get there. And even if you did do it, you might not have been there, because you might not have had the talent on top of it, because you do need a level of genetic talent as well. And a lot of people have it that don't make it to the league because they didn't put in the effort, right? So anyway, do you believe that what amount of the luck do you believe plays in the role of success, particularly with athletes?
Yeah. So like I said, I used to write a lot of stuff on my wall. So I think I forget which school. You know how they send you out all these letters and you're like, they're interested in you.
Yeah.
You think, yo, I got like 30 schools I'm about to go. And one, I think it was the University of Richmond. They sent out something that said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And so, and I guess it's a little biased for me because, or it's a little selfish to me when I talk to like young kids that want to be football players and stuff. I overemphasize the luck because a lot of me selfishly wishes that they would put their effort and energy into something else. But when it comes down to it, you know, it's the luck, like you said, it's sprinkled on top. That's the best way that I could put it.
There's a little bit.
It's really just tapping into a different level that it's going where everybody else is not willing to go. And the only way that I've been able to do it is I actually find joy. There's a pleasurable feeling. It's not that there's a pleasurable feeling when somebody else quits. It's not about them, but it's like the fact that I'm not. Like I'm competing against you. My boy and I at the gym, the owner, we were flipping tires yesterday. And he asked me, he's like, hey, you want to do this? Like I'd already worked out like a whole workout. He's like, you want to do some flipping tires? So he probably thought like, you know, he's going to, you know, do better than me or whatever. So I kept going. I was tired of shit. Yeah. I felt like stopping. But as soon as he said like, oh yeah, that's good. I said, are you good?
Exactly.
Like, are you good? He's like, and it's like, for me, now I can do 100 more. Yeah. Just because, and I don't know what that is. But
I'm trying to get that in my kids, by the way.
It's almost like you gotta fall in, you gotta fall in love with that feeling, because it's not like being obsessive is not rewarding. And even when you reach your top goal, it's like, because you're obsessive, it's never going to feel as good as you thought, and the goalpost moves. So it's like, damn, you just hit that point where it's like, you made it. But it's like, that's not enough. Like, there's never going to be enough for an obsessive person. So a lot of times we don't feel that rewarding feeling that a lot of others who don't have that mindset feel. So for me, it's like, you got to fall in love with the stuff that other people are not in love with. You got to fall in love with the fact that I don't feel like getting up at 5. But just because you're complaining about it, now I'm getting up at 5. Because now I'm fucking with you mentally, because now you already lost. You know what I mean? Like all these things. So like even on my Instagram, like I'll wake up. I don't care if I got to take a nap. I'm getting up and I'm posting like when I get up, you know, so if you're not up by now, then shit, I already beat you. Like tap out. So it's that type of thing where the luck is the little sprinkle. And to be honest, once you work that hard, it doesn't even matter. Like it didn't even matter. I didn't know that now. It matters for like your opportunity and your network if I made the NFL. However, what really would have helped propel me for the rest of my life is just the fact that I was able to tap in to an area where not a lot of people were able to tap into. And then I knew that I could have applied that in any other area of life. And that's how I look at it.
I felt that way too. Like when I was in college, played football, a couple different colleges, bounced around. Wasn't a great athlete like you were, but I played. And I really trained really hard for the combine thing that you do in the beginning of the season, you know, when you first come into camp, you know, and you got to do the 40 and the vertical and the bench press and all this. And yeah, it's like what you put in is what you get out, essentially. You know what I mean? And I had so many friends that like you go to camp and it's like, like on bench press, I did it over 30 sometimes, you know, and for 225. Yeah, but nobody else did. Like none of the linemen even did. They were like low 20s for the linemen, and everybody else was like teens. And some of these bozos only got like 6 or something. I was like, did you even work out? You know? But it's all about the preparation. It's all about putting the hard work in and being obsessed about that and having a plan and executing on that plan. And it's just incremental. And then being able to do that, for me at least, I said, if I can do that, I got over 400 bench and this, to be able to do those things, I literally thought to myself, if I could do that, I could literally do anything, because I had a plan, I executed the plan, and at the end, these were the results of that plan, right? So anything in business and life, it's all about having a plan, developing the plan, following the plan, execute the plan, and you may not get the perfect results out of it, but you're going to get better results than not doing any of it, right? And that's kind of the way I've always kind of led ever since college, really. You know, it's just, I felt, you know, being a football player and training and stuff just like taught you how to put in hard work, you know? So I got a lot of respect for everybody who's done it, you know?
And what you just, first off, you're an amazing athlete. Anybody that could do that, You're a great athlete. I've never touched 400. I've never gotten 30.
And you were a linebacker
so
in Canadian Football League. You're outside linebacker there, weren't you?
Yeah, I know. And it's even then I thought I was strong.
Yeah, but you were fast as hell, right? I was running like a 4.6, 4.7, but that was a hand time. I don't know what electronic time would have been in a combine. I mean, you come on. You know, you had a 4.5, right? What was your
It was I had from a high 4.4 to it was like because we actually had a lot of scouts at our pro day. It was a 4.47 to a 4.56
bro. That's and people don't realize this.
Yeah, so it's
a 4.4 versus a 4.7 dramatically different. I mean, big time. There's so many people that can get in the 4.7, 4.8, 4.9s. Once you start going below 4.5, there's not that many human beings that could do that. You know, so that's some fast feet. All right, let me ask you a different question.
I got lucky.
That's not luck, bro.
I'm messing with you.
And what people also don't realize is that on the 40-yard dash, you can train for that too. You could shave off a couple tenths of a second by form, bringing your body up slowly. Like all these, there's so many different tricks to all these things. Stretching.
Looking at other people, like putting in your mental training, like all of these things.
And nobody talks about this stuff, but like there's literally a way to train for the bench. There's a way to train for the vertical. There's a way to train for the 40-yard jazz. And it's not like you're tricking it or gamifying it in any way. It's you're doing what you're supposed to do to get the best results. And that's what they're looking for. The NFL and all these teams, they want to know, did he do the research and the work to get to these numbers? It's not like we know that if you ran a 4.6 and you didn't train properly, you might have got a 4.5 or a 4.4, right? I don't know. But you didn't train properly. 100%. That's the whole point, right? Yeah. Like, why didn't you train properly?
The preparation.
But then every once in a while you get a Tom Brady and you see what he looked like in his draft day photo, and you're like, why'd they give him the opportunity to get to where he is at now? Because he shouldn't even have been picked up in that draft photo. It's kind of funny.
The GOAT, man.
How much do you feel that instincts and intuition have played a role in your success?
A lot. And that, like, it's crazy what your foundation, like all of it comes back to my foundation. And whether it's an instinct, whether I'm out at the club and it's, like, you probably shouldn't, do that, or you probably shouldn't take another drink, whatever it is, it comes down to that foundation that my parents set for me. And that my brother was so gracious to teach me. He was always the one that would touch the stove for me, so I wouldn't have to touch the stove to see if it's hot. Like my parents don't touch the stove. Here goes my brother touching the stove. All right, I'm not going to touch the stove. But my dad always used to tell me, like, if anything that you're doing, how would you feel if it was on the front page of the New York Times? So that kind of, to me, led to, me just understanding that, it's your instincts, kind of just like, what are you feeling at the time? Like, you know when you need to work harder, when you need to become better at something. All of these things factor in, and most of us know it, I feel like, but it's just the actual instinct that's going to take you to go do it. It's like, who's going to go do it? And, I find motivation from anywhere. Like, I remember watching Floyd Mayweather, like 24/7s. If he's running, I don't box, I don't do any of this shit. Yeah, it was in the rain. I was in college, like we were in our apartment and watching it with my boys, and I'm just like, I'm going to run. And I just went out and ran. And they're like, yo, it's raining. And for me, it was like, now they're gonna think I'm crazy from raining. So now I gotta go fucking do this shit. Just so they know there's a difference. Yeah. You know what I mean? And shit like that. Damn, I be playing games on myself. But yeah, like when I'm thinking about it, but instincts are everything. Yeah. But you can't have, I don't think that you can have really great instincts without just a solid foundation.
So it's developed.
You can grow to
exactly.
have it. But yeah, you can develop it. But I was very lucky and fortunate to have it developed, by people who had my best interest at heart. So yeah.
Michael Jordan has admitted to having butterflies before a big game, which is amazing. I mean, this is the GOAT, right? Mm-hmm. And I would just imagine that you must have been nervous as fuck going out to your first NFL game. So can you describe what it felt like to go into a stadium, people are screaming, 60,000 fans, like describe that first time you stepped on the field in the NFL, how you felt going in, how you felt on the first play. And you started in the first year, right? Then you got 6-7 tackles that year. So you were a starter in 13 games. Explain to us how your first start felt going out in the NFL.
And I have to preface it with that year that I started, we came into camp. I was coming off a shoulder injury my first year that I missed the whole year. And my coach, Alan Williams, he sat everybody down in the room and he listed I think there was 13 of us on a board, and I was at like 12B. And that was the ranking of where we are. And he said, yeah, we're probably taking 3, maybe 4. Ooh. So this was like a week before training camp. And so I had already had that mindset where it's like, fuck. And not to say that this was easy. I called my house crying. Sure. I called my friends crying, just because it's so frustrating when you want something so bad and you're so close to it. It's like, yeah. And it's like, you may not get there. And
especially when you're there, that's probably even worse than not.
You're there,
right?
You're there. Go home. I'm seeing all my heroes. Like I'm seeing like Bob said, like I'm Peyton Manning, like God. Antoine. But I'm seeing all these players, Dwight Freeney, Robert, and it's like I'm here, and you want to feel like you're a part of them, but you know that you're never going to really be a part until you make the actual team. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm in camp, and I'm kind of please tell me the question again so I could just lock in on that particular thing. Because I'm going to go on a tangent.
Yeah, no. It's just the nervousness going into a game. Like Michael Jordan has admitted like Tim Grover, I read the book Relentless, and he says that he was even nervous before his big games. And this had to be the biggest game of your life. You're walking into your first NFL start. So I wanted to know emotionally how you were feeling, preparation-wise, et cetera.
I had a disadvantage and an advantage. William Mary, small school. I was ecstatic if we got 14,000 people to watch our games.
Homecoming.
Most of the time, it was less than that. Yeah, right? Homecoming, yeah. So that was like, forget the games. Like I had to get past practice, where like a night practice in training camp, there's like 20,000 people out there. And I'm like, holy
we're just practicing.
Like, and right. And that led into the game to where I'm not, how can I put this? Like I'm a nice person. Like I don't necessarily go through life. How some people are just mean and just ready to go. And it works in a lot of ways. I had to, like, in practice, you get those players where it's like, yo, why'd you have to hit them that hard? It's practice. Or why'd you have to do that? Like, bro, like, just relax. No. I had to change my entire thinking to become that asshole.
Well, you have to be 100 miles an hour in practice in the NFL, right? Yeah.
You have to. And that's the only way that I could ignore the butterflies. I always had a problem with that, to where I can remember my first game that I was playing, Montclair, like I was 10 years old and no idea what was going on. And those same butterfly feelings, that was the one thing that I was happy when I gave up football. It continued forever. It didn't even matter if we were playing like a bummy team. It's like, it's there and I hate it. I can't get rid of it.
Until the first hit.
Until that first hit. So going into the first game, we were playing, it was a preseason game in St. Louis. And I kind of carried over the mindset. Coach Caldwell, he saw me in practice. I was hitting everything. And he's like, hey, Caldwell, ironic, we're not related, but we're not related. So, and he said, yeah, we've been seeing you in practice, but we want to see what you're going to do in a game. And for me, that was like a challenge. Like, oh shit, like you can't be one of these practice players, like one of these practice superstars and just shitty in the game. So I just tapped into that same asshole feeling, to where it's like, like Peyton wasn't playing that day, and all of the veterans, it almost made it worse that they weren't playing, because they were all like locked in on you. So like
he's not on the sidelines looking at the clipboard.
Like this is like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is like one of my heroes. Like, and it's like yo, DAC, like go hit that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just like, bro, like this is my, you know what I mean? So I had to tap into that, and it almost got to the point. The only thing that helped me, because I was nervous out of my mind, and you want to get hit that first. It's like you don't want to get hit too hard, but you want to be the one hitting. But it's like on kickoff, I'm finding somebody to hit, or on kick return, I'm going to find somebody to hit, just so I can kind of shake it off. Because once you get that first hit,
it's crazy how that helps.
Shit with the guy, whatever. Now there's no crowd. I don't give a fuck. Now it's you and me. Like next time, like now it's like forget all the other distractions. Like right, and luckily, and it just goes to play on that confidence. That first, those first couple hits, to where I was, playing well, and to where, a couple of the guys, they were like, yo, you be striking, like you be hitting. And never really was like trying to necessarily be a big hitter. Even in college, like you had some big hits and stuff. But when I transitioned to that, it was like, I'm going to be the aggressive asshole out here. And people are just, they're going to have to deal with me. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have to deal with me. So when we're in practice and we're competing, like, I want to see somebody like count the numbers. If I'm number 4 in line, I want to see them like, oh shit, number 4, like them try to slide to number 5, so they don't got to go against me. Like that was my mindset, and that's the only way that I could deal with the butterflies. And to be totally honest, you know, that first game when you got all these stars and stuff out there, it's like shit,
surreal.
Like, you find out exactly who's who and what's what, and that's when your preparation, you really find out, you know, your mental preparation.
Who'd you play against? First game you played against?
St. Louis Rams.
Who was the running back? Who was the running back?
St. Louis Rams. Shit. By the time I was playing, it was just like the backups and stuff, which are the worst guys that you want to play against in preseason. The people, the third and fourth, fifth string, those games, those preseason,
everybody's got something to prove.
Were the most intense things. It's like, yo, these are the cats that they all have my mindset that I don't give a fuck. I'm making this team by just outmanning you, because that's why I like. As much as I have an issue with the game of football, it's like you're going to find out what type of man you are very quickly. And everybody else, you're going to do it while you're in front of everybody else. So for me, it was, I don't know, like you just got to tap into a different
What about your first started full season game?
All right. So the first start that I ever had was for a real game was with the Steelers. On Monday Night Football. No, it was Sunday Night
Football was your first?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so cool.
Sunday Night Football was my first start. So they did the whole thing, like, you know, you get to say your name. Ben was playing. And it was the running back. Who was it? Mendenhall. Rashard Mendenhall. I had been watching him for so long. And big dude, right? And I'm just like, damn, I used to see him and Rick Lewis going back and forth. Like, shit. Like, I'm seeing all my idols and stuff on the field. And I just put it in my head where it's like, do you remember Peyton Hillis? Kind of to go back on Peyton Hillis. He's number 40. He's like a big dude. That's the game that I got put in when the player before me got hurt. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just said at the snap of this game, you know, you're supposed to disguise, stay back, you know, so don't let the quarterback know what defense you're in. I just flew for this guy. I just flew for him, and he made like a pivot to where I'm thinking like he's gonna this is gonna be a huge contact, and he stepped out of the way. That was all the confidence I needed. That was all the confidence I needed, though, because I'm like, he should have attacked me. You know what I mean? But he kind of avoided me. And then when I went against Mendenhall and I had a good hit against him, it just shifted my mind. You know, it's like, shit. Like, and that was the game where it's like, you're announcing yourself like, hey, David Caldwell, the college away Mary. Nobody thought that I was starting. Cool. People barely knew that I was on the team. You know what I mean? So that was a big game for me.
What regrets do you have in your life professionally?
When I talked about how preseason was so important to me that year, like I actually led the whole preseason in tackles. Like I said, it was just a laser focus for that particular time, but it was hard to carry it over into the regular season. And, you know, to have that same edge, you know, that I had where, you know, my coach is telling me you're probably not going to make team, whatever. And my biggest regret is not becoming more of a student of the game. You know, I obsessed over, you know, learning the playbook in camp, and I obsessed over certain things. However, I don't think that I was as obsessed that I needed to be. Not everybody had to, but like I said, I wasn't the most talented. Right. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the biggest. And I didn't obsess that whole season. And that's where I've seemed to notice where a lot of guys separate themselves, where you separate yourself where you made the team, but then you separate yourself where it's like you become a great player. Mm-hmm. Then it's like you separate yourself. You're one of the great, you know. So I didn't feel that for what I needed to do to stay on that team, I didn't feel that if I would go back, I would definitely do a lot more. And even in the last, I can't even say that was more so. It's not like I don't think anybody really noticed, or, you know, it's not like I got cut during the season. I actually got cut. We had a new coaching staff come in, Pagano. And the first week I got home after starting that year, I'm playing basketball and I come down on my best friend's foot and break my ankle.
Oh my God.
And they didn't know it was broken for like 3 months. Wow. And then like I went to visit specialists in Charlotte, and the doctor comes in the room. He's like, so are you still planning on playing football? And I'm like, bro, what? And he's like, this is the worst ankle I've ever seen.
Oh man.
Because of the scar tissue and everything. I was playing on it for 3 years. So it's, but that's not the excuse. Everybody has injuries. Yeah. What I'm saying is I needed to obsess over the books and everything else that I could have obsessed over in order to overcome that.
Sure.
So sorry.
That's not good.
In order to overcome that. So therefore, I always look internally. I don't care what the situation is. I'm always going to look at what could I have done. So that's definitely a regret of mine. The one regret that I think about is you fucking with me saying that I should have gone to Princeton. But no. But that's because that's something that I do think about all the time. But William and Mary, that's my spot.
I tell my wife all the time, if our kids get accepted to Ivy League, they don't have a choice. They're going.
They don't have a choice. Yeah, that's right. Trust me, I'll be the same way. You're learning from me. But just the only time that I look back and I have regret is because, for one, first and foremost, I just haven't, if I felt like, damn, I just needed to obsess over it a little bit more, or looking back and not enjoying stuff as much. And that's a weird one, because I didn't enjoy playing football when I was playing in the NFL. It was almost like a pressure packed, stress, anxiety thing. Yeah, it's like I enjoyed being a football player. Everybody's showing you a lot of love and stuff. You enjoy that, but actually the game that I grew up loving, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't love it anymore. And that probably happened somewhere in college. And then, when it's the NFL, it's like, shit, like this is this is all
real business
day. Like my hours, you know what I mean? So that would be, and then not being able to, and this is the biggest regret. When I obsess over stuff, I'm not necessarily always the nicest person to be around. And I know that me obsessing over stuff as, it's like, damn, I shouldn't have been so short with my mom and my dad, or I shouldn't have been so mean to my girlfriend or my brother. Those are the type of things that I regret. And like I said, it just, for me, it's like, it's almost an obsession, an addiction, because that's the only way I know.
It's funny you say that, because I was a lot in my 20s. Like I worked all the time, and my mom used to get upset that I didn't call her enough. Wouldn't stop by the house enough, and I still lived in the town across town from where I grew up, and I was just always working, like literally nonstop on my laptop. And mom didn't understand the plan and understand what I was doing, and she shouldn't have had to understand. Like I should have been a better son and just called more or something like that. So I agree with you. One of the regrets I have is not having a better balance. I don't know that you can have that balance and achieve that success. Maybe that's kind of the double-edged sword to it in a way, or if that's the right way to characterize it. But if I could have, I should have done a better job of trying to do that. So I agree with that. That's the one thing is the neglecting of the people around you, because you're so obsessed about what you and you don't even realize it. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
Yeah, you don't.
No, yeah.
You think this is the norm. Like this is how, like they'll be fine.
Exactly. So, DAC, why don't you tell us about the NFL Alumni Association? What do you do there? You're vice president. Tell us about it and how you came to the opportunity, and what exactly it is that you do there, and what you guys are doing.
So it's a cool situation, and it's an association I wasn't really familiar with. I was more familiar with the NFL Players Association, because that's something that you join as a player. And my buddy Jude, who went to William & Mary before me about 10 years, and then he played in the NFL, he was serving as the president in New York City and Long Island. So he wanted to bring me on board. And at first I was like, I'm good. Like, I just want to focus on my work. But then he was like talking about all the opportunities, and I liked it. And what I liked about it is they encourage you to leverage the NFL alumni, an organization that you earned your way into, through your hard work and expertise. And to use that in your business, to use it as a networking tool, all these things. So for us, the general goal is to help out the community. So luckily I was in healthcare. So for me, and I started off in sales and healthcare, and most of my clients now, because my partner's experience as well as mine in healthcare, a lot of them are doctors, specialists. So what I said, was always important for me, because I had a nonprofit foundation at the time, where we pretty much, my mom and I and my brother and a couple close friends, we had a program where it's after school and enrichment program where we teach kids about finances, history, all these things. We play Monopoly, teach them real estate. So that was just something that I was into, and it allowed me to kind of bring everything together. So here I could do something for a lot of these specialists, these doctors that want to, volunteer, want to do certain things, want to come into the community. I was able to bring them on board to say, like, we went to Manhattanville, one of the New York City Housing Authority buildings, across from City College, who was a client of ours. So it's like, okay, boom, like, we're going to put pressure on City College. That's something that they wanted to do. But, it's just something that they're literally right across the street, but it's just one of those things where it's like out of sight, out of mind. So I would be able to bring the City College to Manhattanville, have the NFL alumni use that relationship to, get sponsor money so we can have a huge event and have a fair to where we're giving them like educational advice, professional development, health and wellness, all of these things. And it allows you to bring it together. And a lot of your clients and stuff, they're looking for that. They want that because, it's a different type of rewarding experience that you get, when you're giving any work to community and just helping people who really need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing, you're helping your family, which is, always first and foremost for me. Family got to develop the foundation at home. But when you can kind of use your, not celebrity, but just use your influence to just impact other people and inspire them. There's a different feeling where it's like, damn, this total stranger is actually impacted by me and inspired. Like it's just a really good feeling. And it's for a great cause. So the NFL alumni, that's it's something that we're really growing. Something I'm gonna actually bring you on board with some stuff. I got some ideas, but it's one of those things where they solely focus. What drew me into that more than the NFL PA, the PA is an extension of the NFL, so they can only do certain stuff. They're mainly going to be focused on the current players. Just is what it is. Yeah, NFL alumni is for a group of players that focus on every single challenge you're going to face from your moment leaving the NFL. And that's from a financial standpoint, from a job standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, mental health standpoint, all of these areas that people are struggling with. That's where the NFL alumni comes in. So that's what kind of drew me to it. And it allows me, like even my critiques or criticism, of the NFL, I'm able to not only just talk shit, but I'm able to actually help a lot of the former guys. It's like, where it's like, hey, you may not know about healthcare. You may not know about companies like Stryker and Arthrex and Smith & Nephew, but they actually want you. At the time when I was working with Stryker, they hired more NFL players than I think everybody except like they were 1 and 2 at Merrill Lynch. And I'm like, this is something I had no idea about. So the NFL Alumni Association, that's like, that's the brotherhood. And it sucks because a lot of guys don't get involved with it. I'm one of the younger guys. They don't get involved with it until you're like 40, 45, because not a lot of people leave the NFL unless you're like Peyton Manning, or even those guys probably don't leave the NFL. Like, and you get your party, hey, you're retiring. Everybody
just
feels
gets
good
cut
about
in the
you.
last cut usually.
Yeah, right? I was like, yo, you're not good enough. You get your cut slip and it just says did not perform up to expectations to make the team. Which you get that letter. I put mine on my door, so I'd see it every day. But just you still
have that?
I had it. I took it off because I was like, you know what? I'm done with it. I used it to get to a certain point, and then it's like, you know what? Fuck that. I don't even want that energy, But it's like I had a love-hate, really like strong love-hate relationship with the NFL at the time. So that I would have that on my door every day just to like read it, not just have it there, but read it. And but the association allows guys to just give back because there's a lot of things that we don't foresee. That play, we always hear about, guys going broke and all this other stuff. When you can help with that and really, present opportunities to certain guys, that really makes a difference. And a lot of we have an event tomorrow with my company. It's a healthcare company. Why would they want 4 NFL guys coming? But I got, the NFL PA president coming. I got the NFL alumni, Bart Oates president coming. And it's just because everybody has relatable stories, not just from a standpoint of like, oh, he's an NFL guy, but when you start breaking down like what allowed that doctor to become that doctor and to become successful, it's a lot of the same stuff like you said earlier. Like these obsessions are shared by the people that are achievers and successful and winners. So, I try to bring as many people, to the party as, as possible. And usually you get some real great results because guys get to interact with people that they would never normally interact with.
Tell me about Street Smart Salesman. That's a company that you've.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about Street Smart Salesman. What do you do there? How did you started the company, right? Is it your company?
It's actually my uncle. That was his brand.
Okay.
And then we came together and, we started to do business development consulting. Okay. I shouldn't even say that was his brand. That was the business that he was doing on his own.
Now, behind your left shoulder on a shelf, you have a book. Is that a?
Oh shit! Yeah, the book's
show us the book.
Show
us the book. Check it out.
Hold on. Yeah. Good thing I got pants on for this one. So this is my uncle's book, Street Smart Salesman, and his story. I talk about my dad's going to the Seek City College program through Seek. He went through Seek too, and that's how their connection was developed. He grew up probably poorer than my dad. Like, he grew up in East Harlem, and it was a result of his mom had a condition. I'm not sure. I don't want to say it's the wrong one, but it was a condition, musculoskeletal issue, where she was bedridden. And they were doing well. They were in the Bronx, Central Bronx, living in a nice neighborhood. But then because of that, they had to move to East Harlem. And he grew up, I'm talking like no lock on the door, like never brushed his teeth, like never went to school, smelled his whole life, like all of these things that you would just associate with just a poor, dirty person. That was him. And if you see like the tagline, it's how growing up poor helped make me rich. So
that's what I'm talking about right there. The grit.
Exactly. He knew that when he got into the real world, that there were a lot of advantages that other people had over him. And when he got into sales, he realized that all of those advantages, it's kind of a level playing field. Yeah, you might not have the same network, that others may have. But when it comes to doing the day-to-day sales activity, where you had to develop a lot of these things out of survival, growing up in the neighborhood that you grew up with, learning how to read body language, learning how to communicate with people, learning how to get your point across without making that other person feel threatened, like all of these things that you're doing in sales to sell something. He already had an education in the streets that gave him a huge advantage. So he tapped into that and created a system based on emotions and how people, buy off of emotions and not logic and all these things. And he incorporated everything. He was a very good baseball player as well. And all of those things incorporated that. This is my playbook. When I say like he became my new coach, this became my playbook. I was obsessed with it. Any of my young boys that, that I talk to, young kids, they get that book. Oh, I want to, if anybody tells me, hey, I want to, be, I want to, explore this. I really want to be successful. I just hand them the book. I said, don't talk to me until you read the book, and then we could talk. And this kind of just set the stage for me. And what we do now is, we rely on just common sense principles, like that street smart knowledge, where, it's not necessarily the college knowledge, but it's doing what makes sense for all of our clients. And we kind of tap into that where, for example, like I don't call doctors doctor. If your name's Brian, I'm calling you Brian. Like, it's just something from it's actually giving you more respect. At the time, and some doctors, they may say something. I've never really had anybody challenge me on it.
My name is Dr. So-and-so. It's like,
but even if they do, I'll laugh at you. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's like, I know that if I call you doctor, I want to break your inner circle. I want you to become a fan of mine. I want you to become, it would be like your favorite football player, like, don't call me Peyton, call me Mr. Manning. No, call me Peyton. Yeah. Now you feel like you're in the inner circle, right? I want to get in your inner circle. I want to separate myself from all of these other reps that are trying to kiss up to you. Yes, Dr. such and such. Yes, Dr. such and such. No. What's up, Brian? Like, what'd you do this weekend? Yeah. Like, okay, cool. But to do that, you have to make sure that you obsess over the other stuff, where it's like, I know that my service is on a whole nother level. I know exactly what this doctor needs. I know what they want. I have a backup for the backup. All of these things I have to put in my head. And that's what the book taught me. And that's what, my life experience has taught me, to kind of create my own system that's unique to me and just be myself. I've learned that just being myself, people are attracted to somebody who are being themselves. I even my videos, the old videos that I look at, I used to say like, hi, my name is David Caldwell, and I'm here to say, and it's like, I'm embarrassed by that shit now. Like, I was doing it because I thought that's what people wanted. Like, I thought I was insecure to the point where I felt that I had to show my credentials based on how I was talking. And I could speak properly to you, but just still be myself, to where it's not like acting, and people can read that. People read that where it's like, this guy's not being genuine, he's being phony. So now, like, I encourage all my doctors to, even with the podcast where I talk about like political stuff, anytime, go watch it. Like, it is what it is. This is me. You know what I mean? And I'm confident enough with myself to know that you learning more about me, I'm going to catch more people than I lose. And when I catch them, they're really going to have conversations where now the dynamic switch, where these doctors are now asking me like, hey, like, I saw you mention that. Like, what do you think about? And I'm like, the fuck, you're a doctor. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why you care about anything I'm saying?
Let me
like,
tell you, I do the same thing, by the way. I call my doctors by the first name. I literally always get their phone number too, and I text message them, which they never want to give out a phone number to anybody, but I'm not gonna be your patient unless I have your phone number. You know,
right.
It's like, like you're just a human being. Like they put on the white coat, and it's like this is like a whole thing, right? You put on that white coat. They call me a doctor. Don't call me by my name. I'm an authoritative figure. They're putting a pecking order in place, right? That's what's happening here. But I agree with what you're saying. You want to kind of break that barrier down and be on an even playing field with everybody, right? Like we're all just people, man. Like there ain't no different than each other, you know. I think that's really interesting. Let's. And
the respect level is always going to be there.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, like, my doctors will come out to me. Your point is that once you break that barrier down, they're asking me for advice on things, right? They'll text me like, "Yo, so what stocks are you looking at?" Or this Bitcoin thing's moving, and what do you think of Ethereum? Yeah, like so now they're asking me. What are we doing back and forth? We're providing value to each other, and it's not a one-way street. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now they're a fan of yours, and now you guys have a relationship that is different than any of their patients.
That's true.
So for me. Yeah. If I'm competing against somebody else, I don't care how many lunches you buy the doctors. Like when I go and visit doctors and stuff, they're like, "Oh, can you bring a lunch?" No, I'm sorry, we don't
Call
do
your
lunch.
Secretary.
And I tell them exactly why. I'm saying, like, to be honest, one, we're not a big corporation. I know a lot of reps do that. I don't really consider myself a rep, but we don't do that because at the end of the day, like, until we have a meaningful conversation to where we both, agree that there's some, area of synergy where we can move forward, then we do that. And immediately now they're like, damn, he's different.
Yeah. Because everybody else bends over backwards,
Like, I'm not bringing you fucking donuts.
Yeah,
like
I'm not your bitch.
Right. Now 4 years ago, I probably would have brought you some donuts, but nah, like my price went up. My friends always joke around, my price went up. Like, nah. So
love it.
It is what it is.
I mentioned Bitcoin before we hop. Let's just talk about it for a couple minutes. So you don't own Bitcoin. First order of business, you need to buy some Bitcoin. Okay. Bottom line, right? You got to buy some. I asked you, and I don't think you knew anyone. Do you know any professional athletes that are currently or former players that bought Bitcoin or in Bitcoin? You said not really, Yeah,
I can't think in my head, and that's a shame, and it really is a shame because it's just a lack of knowledge.
Yep.
And it's to the point where, like, even if I hear Bitcoin, it's like you talk to somebody about the stocks, invested in stocks. If they don't know anything about it, they're intimidated by it, so therefore they'd rather say like, "Nah, I ain't doing that shit." Like, but it's like, bro, you're successful, so that's why I enjoy talking to you, and it's like, okay, boom, he's successful. What did he do? Like, if he's in Bitcoin, then I need to learn more about it. I want to tap into your mind. Like, and the only way that I can do that is to make sure that I'm bringing some type of value to you, to where I'm not just asking you for something where it's like, okay, boom, like maybe I can help in certain areas with you. Maybe, hey, there's somebody that you might want to interview. We're talking about, the female coaches.
Yeah.
Like maybe I can, you got to help people, people help people, and it should be a cycle. It should be a two-way street. So Bitcoin is something I'm definitely going to invest in, and you are officially now my financial advisor. Let me know.
Don't call me that. No, but for real, I would like to get you on Clubhouse because I know you have the app. So we'll friend each other and then I'll ping you into a couple rooms and we'll talk about it. It could be something you talk about with the doctors. It could be something you talk about with your family and friends. It could be something you talk about with the retired NFL guys and the alumni. I think it's something that people should learn about for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. One of the things that I find scary, actually, is the debasement of the dollar and the inflation that's been rampant, right, in this country with all the money printing. So the money printer started in 2009 when we had the financial collapse. It was $800 billion. Over the last 12 months, they printed almost $12 trillion with a T. I mean, it's out of control. They printed something like 30% of the United States' money that's ever been printed in the last 12 months. 30%, right? And only increasing. And what that's doing is it's not allowing people or affording people the opportunity to just take their money that they've worked really hard for and just put it in the bank account and let it just sit there for a rainy day. Right. So if you're like a blue collar worker, average American, you don't have enough assets to go invest, right? Like for the most part. So you're leaving your money in cash that you do have a few $1,000s as like an emergency fund of some sort. And even if you make a little bit more than that, you're in the low six-figure range and you're saving for your kids' college or whatever it is, you're really not, because you're saving and you're putting it in cash. Most people aren't investing, right? They're saving and living in cash, and you're losing to inflation every year about 2 or 3% a year, right? So If you got $100,000 next year, you got 90. What is it? You just do a little math here to tell you how crazy this shit gets, right? So if you got $100,000 after 1 year, you're going to have 97, 2, 3, 4. Listen to this. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You'll have like $70,000 in 10 years at a 2 to 3% inflation annually, right? Of buying power, right? And it gets worse as time goes on because it's like a compound, right? So over 20 years, you'll have half your money in buying power, right? Most people don't, it's like they don't realize that the government is literally just stealing our money. They're stealing your money. The Fed is controlling this, right? And so like, this is what Bitcoin has been able to do for people, because Bitcoin, there's 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created ever. So far, there's like 18.5 million roughly that have been created. By the year 2025, there'll be 1 million coins ever from that point moving forward until the 2140, I think it is, right? So the next 100 years or so, 115 years, there'll be 1 million more coins produced. They mine them, and so you want to put your money somewhere where you can store the value, so that it doesn't get debased and lose buying power over time. And so Bitcoin has been going up in value by about 200% per year on average. Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. Now, I don't think it's going to keep doing that moving forward, but it could be 100%. It could be somewhere between 50 to 100%.
Over the inflation rate.
It's going to be way over the inflation rate. It's way over the stock market S&P returns. It's going to be, and those things are out of control. PE ratios are really high. The values, the multiples that they give on a company, the multiple of the earnings, right, is astronomical in terms of a historical perspective. Interest rates are basically at 0%, so that makes sense, right? Because it's all about the hurdle rate of like, if I could put my money in a CD or a treasury, what am I going to get? And these days you get like nothing, right? So the returns are, are based off of that, right? And so if you're going to invest your money in a CD or some kind of a treasury or some kind of a low risk instrument, you're not going to make any money. You're going to lose money technically, right? So you can buy Bitcoin and you can let it sit there, and it will be volatile as hell, right? It goes up and down a lot, right? So you could buy it like a couple months ago, you could have bought it for $64,000, the all-time high, and now it's tracing back to like $30,000. You're down by 50%. Don't sell it, don't lose it, right? Let it sit, wait 4 or 5 years, and I would have to say that there's a very good chance that it's worth a lot more money, right? And so what we've done is friends of mine, we've done like the old compound interest calculators, right? So if you go on a compound interest calculator, and I'm gonna just pull one of these up, and we can just put it on the screen when we do the interview. They'll edit this in here, but if you took, let's say you took $20 a day away, right? And you put it into Bitcoin. Make it simple. $20 a day, 365 days a year, it's $7,300 a year, right? So if you take $7,300 a year and you save it every year, and you do this for the next 10 years, and you get a return of 75% a year, you're going to have $4.5 million when it's all said and done. Now, you have saved $73,000. That's how much you put away. You're coming away with 4.5. Now, people are listening and saying 75% return compounded. This guy's crazy, right? It's been doing 200%. So what do you think it's going to be? Right? Like, that's what you have to ask yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so like, even if it's at a 50% growth rate moving forward, you're going to have $1.2 million, and all you saved over the next 10 years will be $73,000. And that's a 50% CAGR when we all know that it's been going up 200% a year. I don't think that's sustainable, but that's what it has been doing, So I just believe that everybody should be in Bitcoin. You should have some exposure. I don't think you need to put all your money in it, but I think with that kind of a growth rate, listen, man, you put 2, 3, 4, 5% of your money in Bitcoin and you just don't touch it for 10 years. It'll be worth 99% of your net worth. You know what I mean? So this is my thing. And I think that you should learn it. We should talk offline about it, and you should tell all of your other friends that you advise, because I know you do that, right? So you talk about this kind of stuff with people. I think you should learn it. And I really think, DAC, you should buy some Bitcoin. I really do.
Well, I'm already sold on it now that you told me, this. And it's like I said, it's one of those things where you hear about it, you know that you should learn more about it. But damn, when you go over those numbers, it kind of puts everything into perspective. And, that's just the lack of, knowledge, that I've had, where I wouldn't, I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. And I'm sure a lot of people have had frustration. People have tried to tell me, but I'm like, whatever. But no, go ahead.
I want to ask you why you haven't pulled the trigger. And usually what we call it is a unit bias, the price? Is it because you think it's gotten so expensive that it's left you behind? Like you're like, oh, I missed that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like whenever something hits where I automatically feel like when I hear about it, it's already too late.
So,
but then I'm like, shit, this shit's still
but this
growing.
is the one thing.
You know?
It's like Amazon stock in 1997 when it went public, right? Had people bought the Amazon stock at that time and not touched it, I forget what the numbers are, but if you put like $1,000 in today, you'd have millions. It's crazy, right? And during that time frame, Amazon stock has dropped by like 50%, 12 times. It's dropped by 7%, 100 plus times, right? Like there's all kinds of statistics around Amazon and how it's a very volatile asset. And yet we all know that Amazon's a great company today. But along the way, Amazon didn't show any profits. Bezos wasn't showing profits, right? He was reinvesting the profits in the company. And Wall Streeters were like, this guy's crazy. He keeps taking the money. And it's like, when are you going to distribute dividends or, show a profit? But in the end, his strategy obviously worked. Now that's an inflationary kind of situation too, because they can go and create new shares and sell to the public. And so you have to hope he keeps taking the money and creating more value with it. With Bitcoin, right, there's only going to be less Bitcoin over time. People lose the keys to their coins, never to be found again. You'll never have it again. So I said there's going to be 21 million Bitcoin I've ever created. There's going to be less because people lose them. So even though there's 21 million ever to be created, which tells you right there alone, if you have a fixed amount of supply, this is basic economics 101, fixed amount of supply, and you have an increasing demand of people that want to buy it, price has to go up. Just has to, just by definition, right? It's like Pokemon cards or Hank Aaron's rookie card. You know what I mean? There's only one, you know what I mean? Or Honus Wagner, right? There's only one Honus Wagner, you know what I mean? So from that perspective, it makes sense,
Yeah, you've just created my new obsession.
Yeah, and this is what you should. And you want to, let me tell you something. Yeah. You get obsessed about Bitcoin, you go down a rabbit hole, you'll never come out of it, right? Because it's like to learn everything about Bitcoin and decentralization of blockchain, everything is going to be. It's a whole nother ballgame. Now, the scary part about going down the rabbit hole, and this is what I'm going to warn you and everybody else. Don't start looking at alternative coins, Ethereum and Cardano and all this crap. It's crap. Right. They're going to be able to create. They're centralized essentially, right? There's companies behind them. There's leadership behind it. The government could essentially attack that company and maybe take it down, or So I personally advise everybody, don't look at what we call shit coins, altcoins, alternative coins, right? In the community they call it shit coins. Don't go down the shitcoin route. It's very tempting to say, oh my God, that's a cheaper price. Maybe that'll eventually be worth $30,000. That's only $2 or 50 cents. That's not going to happen. There's 8,000 of them. There's no differentiation, right? The differentiation with Bitcoin is the scarcity. It's a truly scarce asset, credibly scarce, can't be changed, and it's decentralized. Nobody controls it. So if you like going down the rabbit hole and being obsessed, which we've talked about for the last hour, I guarantee you're going to love Bitcoin.
Nah, I will. And that's, like you said, there's something we could talk offline about, because when you talk about the NFL alumni, that's what players need to hear about.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what players need to hear about. There needs to be certain programs that are targeted to teaching players about this, to the point where we don't get a lot of that. Their financial advice to us was, don't leave your money in the banks. Don't do anything with it. Don't do it. And it's like, so everybody that was bringing different ideas to me, some could be like the shitcoin stuff, but others, it's like, that's actually valuable stuff, but we cut ourselves off to everything. And that's just our thinking. So it's, that's something I look forward to, going.
And plus these guys are being presented, like you said, with too many opportunities. It's hard to make a decision when there's everything coming at you. So when you go to the NFL, like when I sold my company, your number's printed publicly, right? It's a shame, but everybody knows how much you got from something, right? So they know what your contract is. They know what I sold my business for. So people have an idea of how much money you had made from those transactions. And what happens is everybody wants that money. So they contact you, they sue you, you get lawsuits, all kinds of shit happens, right? And that's the shame of it, right? When you've been publicly printed out of what you've made, people are gunning for it. And they're gunning for it in different ways. Like I said, some are lawsuits, which is like obviously devious or whatever and disingenuous and whatever. And then there's the people that are going to come at you and act like they're your friend, but you got to watch out, right? So Bitcoin's great. There's no company, there's no people, there's no commission. Like nobody, when someone says you should buy Bitcoin, it doesn't help them if you buy Bitcoin. It doesn't make the number go up if one guy puts in a few $1,000s or $1 million. It doesn't matter. It's a $600 billion asset. It doesn't make a difference to the thing, It's only there to help the person. So I think you should learn it, and it'd be something you could talk about with the NFL guys. And they don't need anybody to buy it. You don't buy it into a fund. You don't got to do that shit. You just buy it yourself and you custody it yourself and you take it off and cold storage it, and nobody can touch your Bitcoin, man. So it empowers
guys
people.
need to hear like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of the time the message can be drowned out just by us not trusting the messenger.
Right, because they think there's an incentive. So, like, what's he getting out of it?
Right.
There's no incentive here, bro.
And like, just what you said, like there being no incentive in me trusting your word. It's like, oh yeah, this shit makes sense. I'm going to invest.
And here's the kicker, right?
So
institutional money is coming in. Wall Street's coming in, right? MicroStrategy's publicly traded company, Square. Jack Dorsey owns Twitter and Square. Square, right? They own Bitcoin. MicroStrategy owns Bitcoin. Guggenheim, I think, bought some Bitcoin, right? Like, it's incredible. Like, Anthony Scaramucci, who's my first guest, came on my show when I started the show back up. He started a fund where he's raising money from high net worth individuals who don't know how to buy it or can't buy it based off of the bylaws of their fund or whatever it might be. And he's out there doing it. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin in a fund now. There's a lot of money coming into it that's institutional. So when I'm sitting here talking about the average American, the average person, whether you're a millionaire or not, we're all just average, very good people. We're not institutions worth billions of dollars, right? Like, the billionaires and the multi-billion dollar institutions are going to come into Bitcoin. And when they do, numbers are going to go way up. So if you think 30,000 is high or 60,000 was high, what do you think it's going to look like when it's $1 million a coin, or it's $2 million a coin, or it's $3 million a coin? And that's not unreasonable. It's going to happen. And that's when you could start to say, yeah, the future returns are going to be probably less moving forward, because how much further can it go as the market cap gets to like $20 trillion, Right. But and then eventually it'll eclipse gold. Gold's market cap is like $10-12 trillion. It'll eventually eclipse that. I think it's shot past silver. I'm not sure if it's still there, but it will go past silver, go past gold. It'll eventually go past, like, Facebook's valuation. Like, you know what I'm saying? It'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the billionaires will come in. The institutions are coming in. You want to get in now as an individual before you can't get in, right? I mean, you could always buy Bitcoin, right? Because it's fractional. You don't have to buy a full Bitcoin. You could buy the dollars that you want. You could buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. But it will get to a point 5 or 10 years from now, you'll be like, damn, why did I miss that? And particularly if you saw this episode, because you'll be like, I heard it and I still didn't do it. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking about it now. That's why I'm not saying anything. I'm like, shit. Like, why did not? I'm over here kicking myself.
It's all good because you still have time. There's so much time, bro. Yeah. There's so much time. Yeah. Like, when you look at the value that we're talking about today, I really believe within 10 years, we're at probably $1 million for one Bitcoin, right? So in that sense, really simply, where we at today, say $30,000, you got a 33X on that. You put like $10,000 in there, you got $300,000. I mean, I think there's real money to be made for people still, so.
Yeah. No, all right. So so I'll schedule a meeting 100%. With you as my new financial advisor, and we'll do something. We'll do something with the NFL alumni.
Yeah, happy to talk to anybody you want to, and I'll point them in a direction. I think that I'm not even the most intelligent person about this stuff at all, but I would guide people and point people to like some books to read. Like a friend of mine wrote a book, Jason Williams. He wrote a book called "Bitcoin: Hard Money You Can't Fuck With." Great name of a book, by the way. Yep. And then there's the Bitcoin Standard, right, which is a good book. And then I would just encourage people to go on YouTube and just like look up Michael Saylor, Saylor, right? Michael Saylor. This guy's amazing. He talks about a very complex asset class in a very simple way. And that's what you need for complicated things. You need people that can kind of take it and distill it down simply, and then you can listen. And he's so coherent and understandable, relatable. As much as he's probably on the spectrum because he's a super smart, intelligent guy that went to MIT and shit, he don't look like it. He's a smart dude, bro. And he helps average people understand it. And I think he's doing a real great justice to a lot of people in America that will benefit when this starts to continue to move to where it's going,
So Michael Saylor.
Yep. One of my favorite.
I'll look up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on my show still. I've been hitting him up, so I'd like to get him on the show so that I could just bring him to the attention of people that don't know who he is. I mean, he's done a lot already. A lot of people know who he is, but a lot of people don't. So, but DAC, listen, brother, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I appreciate you spending all the time with me this morning. We had a couple hiccups. We had to go back on and off, and it's all good. And I really do appreciate you spending your time with me and telling your story.
Likewise, this is a tremendous opportunity. I just got a new docent. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right, but I got a new docent in you, and I'm very much appreciative. And I'm always looking to build with guys like you. These conversations are the ones that are missing. So thank you for having me. Shout out to Coach Andrews. Appreciate it, bro.
Thanks, DAC.